Welcome to the bonus episode on stress. As you can see, Timmy is not here.
Well, as always, Trevor has sent me far and wide in search of our experts to interview. The one place he didn't send me was Costa Rica. So no Timmy this time for the introduction, just me.
You know, last night's episode was probably our favourite episode, and we put our head and hearts into making that one. But in some ways, tonight's bonus episode on stress is a natural follow-on.
I think so, and I think it's an area that we really do need to take cognizance of, because as Darrell Joffrey says, stress underlies so many conditions of illness, feelings of unwellness, disease, however that manifests itself, and that can affect everything.
It was actually Darrell that stressed to me that this could be an issue in my life, that could be one of the reasons that the depression was still having an effect on me, that my life was simply too stressful.
And I think that's because you are a workaholic and you take on board all this work without deeply thinking about what it's doing to you. It's just what you've always done. It's the nature of who you are. And I think the big danger is that people can fall ill, whatever way it may manifest itself, but they do not realize that there's some element of stress underlying that, whether it's psychological, emotional, whether it's physical toxins, whatever. And I think it can so often be there, but we don't recognize it.
And I think part of the reason for that, Michael, is the way our health system works, because you get 10 minutes in the doctor's office, or 8 minutes, or 6 minutes, you know. There's no way they have time to look at the underlying causes of your disease. And that's why, like in the episode we did on future technology, that's why we do need a new paradigm of how we actually diagnose what's wrong with people.
Definitely. Dr. Edward Group refers to this as an epidemic. Michael Tyrrell, the musician, he talks about stress being a killer. So we really need to be looking at this. And I have really enjoyed the experts that we have this time. Some old friends, some new interviews, and I think you're going to really, really enjoy this.
Absolutely. We have sent Michael to find the best people we possibly could, the most up-to-date research we possibly could. I think you're going to love this episode. Bonus episode on stress.
I'm all muddled up in a mess. Emotions I try to repress. What's wrong with my brain? Am I going insane? My state is an excess of stress. Well, that may be a light-hearted way to look at stress, but even in the attempt at humour, there's a lot of truth. Because stress can make us feel muddled. It can make us feel our lives are a mess. It can even make us seriously ill, physically and mentally. And under pressure, we can genuinely question our sanity. In the next 90 minutes or so, we're going to find out a lot about what stress is, and thankfully, some of the many things we can do to help us cope, including a few of my personal favourites. I really hope this episode is going to bring a lot of encouragement to many of you.
So there's basically three different buckets of stress. There's emotional stress, there's physical stress, and there's chemical stress. Chemical stress are basically the things that we put into our body voluntarily and involuntary. Things like the standard American diet, which we call the SAD diet. You know, 90% of the standard American diet is acidic, it's acid forming. People are literally pumping their cells with things like sugar and grains and artificial sweeteners and dairy, too much animal protein, processed foods, things like carbonated water and coffee, and all these things are making our body more inflamed, more acidic. And then there's the things that we can't control. There's chemicals in the environment. And it's pretty insane that the average person is going to be consumed by 80,000 toxic chemicals in a given year. I mean, whether we like it or not, it's surrounding us on a daily basis, and we have to do things to help our bodies adapt to that. Then there's the physical stress. And physical stress are more like these repetitive stresses. I mean, we weren't meant to sit at a desk all day long. We're literally animals in captivity. The average person sits between 8 to 12 hours a day, and it's affecting our health because we're not moving, our bodies get stuck, and then what happens is, over time, the muscles start to contract. And again, it just affects our health in so many different ways. There's a saying, sitting is the new smoking. And it literally is, because smoking, in one way or another, obviously we don't advocate that, but is better for your health than sitting. There's a study showing that someone that sits in front of a TV for an hour is gonna shave 22 minutes off of their life, their longevity, when smoking a cigarette is gonna shave 11 minutes off. So it's crazy that sitting is affecting our health in so many different ways. So we have to get up, we gotta move our bodies. If you're sitting for 30 minutes, even if you have to set a little alarm on your watch, you gotta get up, you gotta move your body, you gotta reset, because motion is emotion. If we're sitting for prolonged periods of time, it's gonna affect our happiness, it's gonna affect our mood. It can make you feel depressed. And then the third bucket is emotional stress. So emotional stress is something that we have to really kind of take control of, because the emotional state of our being is going to affect our health in so many different ways. When we're stressed, it's going to make our body crave more carbohydrates. Your body's going to start burning sugar as its primary source of fuel, and it becomes this kind of vicious cycle. So emotional stress, I'm going to tell you, is something that affects our bodies and our health 1,000 times more than any other stress that there is. I always say, the things that we feel, the stress that we actually feel, is more acid forming to our body than any food, than any drink you could put into your body. So being healthy is really about helping our body deal with the stress. We're all gonna have stress. We are all subjected to chronic, low levels of emotional stress, physical stress, chemical stress every single day. So the ones who are gonna be healthy, the ones who are gonna win at the end of the day, are the ones who can adapt to the stress in your life. And that's what it's about, because whether we like it or not, stress is there. It's always going to be there. So we have to realize that stress is something that is going to be in our lives. So the ones who are going to be the healthiest are the ones who can actually do the right things for their body, put the right foods into the body, exercise their bodies in a right way, hydrate more, help your body adapt to the emotional stresses that we know we're going to feel, so that at the end of the day, we can actually feel better because of it.
Stress would be anything that triggers our adrenal glands to produce stress hormones. Okay, that's from a physiologic standpoint, which is really interesting, because that could be something spiritual, could be something mental, could be something emotional. Mental meaning like a thought process. It could be emotional, just like with a relationship or anxiety or things like that. Also, nutritional deficiencies can trigger those stress responses. Toxicity, being toxic with something, triggers a stress response. Infection triggers a stress response. So we have all these different things that are classifiable as stress. Stress isn't just an emotional thing. There's physical stressors also. We have poor working habits, where we're working excessively long hours and things like that. We have strenuous physical labor is a stress. Okay, so all these things there's all kinds of stress.
Well, I don't think I'm going to surprise anybody by saying that stress is a killer for anybody. I think the biggest thing is mental and emotional stress, right? That gets to people all the time. And I think a lot of that, which I used to teach to the kids when I was heavily involved in sports and teaching kids this, is that a lot of the mental and emotional stress that I feel that people have, that, let me put it this way, that they feel that they are experiencing in their life is really mostly not true. Let me explain to you what I mean by that. So let's say there's a child who thinks, oh my goodness, I'm about to play in a sporting event and I'm going to lose this match and it's going to be in front of all my friends. And then they start thinking about all these terrible things that are going to happen to them. And most of the time I would tell these kids, and adults as well, that a lot of times the things that you're thinking about aren't really things that are going to happen. Your whole life is not going to end if you don't get a job that you really want, that if you lose a tennis match, your whole life is not going to fall apart. So I think that a lot of the mental and emotional stress that people go through is really just made up in their own mind and a lot worse than it really is. Now, don't get me wrong. There are some people under tremendous stress because of emotional problems inside of the home, relationship problems, really difficult things they're going through work. But what I've told the kids, as well as all the adults I ever worked with, is that no matter what you're going through, look at how you can solve that problem. What things can you do to change the way you're thinking about this situation to make it better? Stop dwelling on it being such a stressful, difficult situation.
Stress is associated in probably one of the biggest epidemics that we're facing now, and it's something that keeps people's self-healing mechanisms suppressed. I mean, when you're in a state of stress, it knocks out your immune system instantaneously by 50%. And when you look at stress, most people think about the sympathetic nervous system. I mean, that's your fight or flight response. But the sympathetic nervous system actually has a positive and a negative side to it. The sympathetic nervous system on the positive side, which means your heart rate goes up, right? When you're in a state of stress, you have a high level of a heart rate. But in that, it can be excitement, happiness, other things that can make your heart rate go up, which would be eustress, which would be a good stress. And during that time, your body produces DHEA, which is a really good hormone balancing and gives you that euphoric feeling. In the sympathetic state, you also have a negative side. Like we're talking always about, there's always a positive and a negative, right? And that's where you're going to be anxious. You're going to be cluttered. You're going to be unhappy maybe. I mean, those are going to be the type of stress that's going to cause the stress that can harm you or suppress your self-healing mechanism. And when you're in that state, the body secretes cortisol, which can be, on a regular basis, can be very damaging to the system. On the other hand, you have your parasympathetic system. And your parasympathetic system has a positive and has a negative side to it. Your parasympathetic system is when your heart rate is very low. So the good side of your parasympathetic is peace, love, meditation, mindfulness, which gives you a very good feeling, a high vibration, and secretes DHEA as well. The negative side of your parasympathetic state is sadness, depression, grief. You have a low heart rate, but it's bringing your overall vibrational frequency down. And guess what? That also secretes cortisol into your bloodstream.
Life itself is stress, and at one point we realized that a stress-free life is death. So there's an irony there that, in other words, if we want to be healthy and have strong muscles, we have to stress them. But maybe we can distinguish between a positive stress and a negative stress. If your goal is, you're working out to strengthen your body, you go through it willingly. Maybe it's a little difficult, maybe it's a little painful, maybe you get a little sore, but you look on it as a positive thing. We used to say it's a good kind of pain. When you're an athlete, you understand that, and you work through it, and you're like, I've accomplished something. So the pain is a marker in a sense. Now, what we might consider a negative stress that results in pain that is not with intention, at least conscious intention, it might be unconscious. We have a goal, for instance, and then we have our subconscious that might be programmed to work against that goal, and there's a conflict, and that stress can manifest as pain, headache, body aches, digestive issues, any number of things. And so there's a tendency to want to control outcome to such a degree that we stress ourselves over things that we cannot control. And sometimes it's not that the outcome is not to some degree controllable, but maybe the timing of the outcome. You have a perception that you should achieve it in a certain time frame, but it tends to be, well, if you were realistic and you had done enough homework, you recognize that typically it's much longer to get there. And so you'll create a stress around that. You say, why haven't I achieved what I set out to? or if you're working against your own best interest because you have subconscious programming. That's another kind of element that builds stress. Like I said, there's a conflict. You think you want something, something in you says, I don't.
As a self-employed musician, I think there must have been in your life a lot of stress. I know 2 other worship leaders who are just kind of constantly in difficulty with, you know, getting their music out and getting any kind of decent income. So there's that kind of stress. There can be toxic stress. There are the stresses of feeling guilty and unworthy, as you were talking about. So just give me your overview on stress and how music and your music may help people.
Perfect. Well, you know, you said it perfectly. As a musician, I mean, living a life of, you know, you love what you do, but you don't realize, I mean, to the average layperson, they look at your life and you go, how do you do that? How do you, I mean, one year with Mylan, it was 300 nights on the road and then two weeks in the studio. That's 314, you know, and you only have 365 to work with. So, but you know, you are called and you're adaptive and you enjoy that. But I will say though, that stress in general, it's a killer. And I think that anyone that knows anything about it knows that it's a killer, because most diagnoses today that we hear from doctors, they always add that as the summum bonum, you know, it's kind of like, well, it could be so and so and so, or it could be stress. They always say, no, it could be stress, because they realize that it exacerbates previously existing conditions, but also creates some on its own. One thing that's awful that people deal with all the time is one of the biggest industries in our country is weight loss. And so much of that weight they gain is from cortisol, which is from stress, being stressed out, which constantly keeps your body in a place where it's overproducing cortisol because it's trying to protect itself. It's fight or flight mode. And then not sleeping, then more cortisol forms at nighttime. So there's a myriad of problems that ensue because people stay in a stressed out condition.
So stress is something that is affecting everybody, whether you're sick or you're not. And I think just like if I go to the dentist, it's like we're never going to wait for a toothache to go to the dentist, though some people do it that way. My point is that we have to kind of anticipate that things can happen in our lives. You know, things like heart disease, cancer, diabetes, Alzheimer's. I mean, these chronic, degenerative, inflammatory diseases are happening in epidemic proportions. And stress is the underlying cause of all these things. Stress is the silent killer. It's taking us out. And again, there's 3 different forms. There's chemical, physical, and emotional. So we have to understand that if you want to be healthy, not just to avoid those chronic, degenerative, inflammatory diseases, but even if you have those, you have to acknowledge that stress is the underlying cause. And if we're not doing something to deal with that stress in our lives, we can't be healthy. So the body is always reactive. The body has to do things based on what it's faced with. And the people who are sick and the people who are having these different types of diseases, they have to understand is that stress is the baseline. And when you start to address the stresses, there's no disease that your body can't come back from. There's no cancer that has never been cured. You know, the only thing that's incurable is the human mind. If you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you can't. I always say, argue with your limitations, and sure enough, they'll be yours. So we have to just realize that stress is at the core of every single health issue that we're having in one way or another. And once you kind of identify that stress is the issue, then and only then can you put together a specific protocol to absolutely help your body deal with those stresses.
Now, I think one of the biggest statements that kind of works against almost anything we want to achieve is, I can't. I cannot, the contraction, I can't. And then you can add anything after that. Most widely used is I can't afford it, which to me is irrelevant to what is or is not in your bank account when you say that. It is a message to the universe or to spirit that you're not worthy. Because who are you to know whether if the universe, life force wants to give you something so wonderful, even more wonderful than you can imagine, and then you spit in its face by telling it, I can't. And in the meantime, of course, it becomes true. You know, if you've heard this statement, whether you believe you can or you believe you can't, you're correct. You're right. So I kind of set the stage here in terms of conflict. Now, as I said, some conflict is good because you're entering into some resistance to strengthen yourself. And I think ultimately, weirdly enough, maybe, that even the so-called negative stressors that can harm us are also there to serve us, to teach us.
Well, that certainly paints a picture of what life can be like for many of us. Thankfully, though, there's a lot we can do to help turn things around very quickly indeed.
I'm doing so many healthy things for us, but I still don't know what my future holds. What I do know is that I can tip that scale in my favor to give my body its very best shot. And that's what it's about. So I got to dial it in because I'm doing a lot of things. I have a lot of emotional stress. It's good stress. It's exciting stress. But your body doesn't know the difference. To your body, stress is stress in all forms. So I have to acknowledge that when one thing increases in my life, I must increase other things in my life. Because if I don't, this is what's going to happen. The stress is going to take you out. So every single day, it's like, what can I do? I wake up, the very first thing I do is I drink a green juice because I want to oxygenate my cells. I want to give energy to my body. What I don't do is put on the news because I don't want to put that stinking thinking into my mindset. I always say, if you win the first hour of the day, you're going to win the entire day. So my question is what are you doing in that first hour when you wake up? That hour needs to be your hour of power. And if you only have 10 minutes, it needs to be your power of 10 minutes. So again, it's not about the time, it's about your intention. So if you can just pick one thing today that you're not doing to tackle one of those buckets of stress, you need to do something to deal with the emotional stress in your life. You need to do something to deal with the physical stress in your life, and you need to do something to deal with the chemical stresses in your life. So if you can just find one of those things and do it for, every day, do it 100% and nail it down. And then once you get into a habit where you think you got it, then you move to the next thing.
I don't mind telling you or your listeners, because most people don't know, I've been vibrantly healthy for years, after especially the extreme life that I've lived. But I think 5 or 6 years ago, after a super trying time, I ended up in an ER, and I found out I had diverticulitis. And I thought, how did I get that? I'm a thin guy, I'm in good shape, I eat totally clean, I don't eat any carbs, I don't eat sugars, anything. And they said, well, it can be from this, or it can be from stress. And I had just gone through the most stressful time of my life. And I thought I was, and that's a good thing for your listeners. A lot of people think that they're modulating their stress good and they don't think it's getting to them. And then it pops out somewhere, and then you go, oh my God, I wasn't carrying it like I thought that I was carrying it. And I ended up with, a bowel disease, a problem that can reoccur at any time. And it's very difficult to deal with. But I sometimes when those things happen, I think what we can take away that's positive is it's a wake-up call in that I didn't know I wasn't managing my stress properly. And it's really funny when I'm glad that was right before Whole Tones, because it's kind of embarrassing to say, hey, guess what happened to the guy, the peacenik from Whole Tones, he's got diverticulitis,
You heard Michael mention Whole Tones. That's the name he's given to the amazing music he plays that's certainly relaxing, but many people find has even deeper benefits.
There was no way I could have been prepared for how fast that people would be writing to us about that very subject. Like, we have certain things, like we talked earlier, about the different things that we've seen, testimonials from people on all kinds of, different types of ailments or whatever, but 97% of the people say that their stress melted away and they didn't feel any anxiety. I mean, you got to be careful when you say that, because they've got all kinds of pills that do that for you, right? But ours doesn't have any side effects except you actually feel good. But ultimately, that's been the big deal for me, Michael, is that if I knew, like when I was really massively stressed out, if somebody could have called me or played music over the phone or said something that would have pulled me out of that so I didn't have to go through all of that, it would have been beautiful. And that, in essence, is what Whole Tones is. It's specifically tuned music with specific frequencies that you simply play as a background for your life to bring peace very quickly to you, so you're not dealing with that constant frayed nerve feeling and dumping poison into your system.
Exercise is a stress. I'm going to use this example. So exercise is a stress, right? And it's a positive stress. The beautiful thing with exercise is it's a dosable stress. It's a stress you can control. Okay, you go and exercise, and so you lift some weights. You can lift as many or as few as you want. It's up to you. Whatever you feel up to, right? And the better you get at it, the more of it you can handle, right? So there's dosable stresses are things that we can use to increase our capacity to handle stress. And exercise is one of those things, okay? And that's important. The thing is all of us have a certain capacity to deal with stress. If we load that capacity too high, our capacity to deal with stress will collapse. And that's when we see chronic disease happen. Okay, and so if we think of someone that's going through a divorce, their child is not well, their job is stressful, they're not eating well, those emotional stressors all raise your nutritional requirements, because your body burns through nutrients faster when you're under stress. When you're under spiritual, mental, emotional stress, your body burns through them just as if you were like an athlete training for an event. Okay, so there's a lot, your nutritional requirements go way up, but typically people turn to donuts and coffee and pizza and all the things that aren't going to give them a whole lot of nutritional support.
So just like inflammation, stress in the short run is going to save us from a dangerous situation. But stress in the long run is going to have a bad effect. So what are some very simple things that we can do that's going to help our body? A very easy thing is breathing. So when we go into fight or flight, what do? There's a third. We freeze like a deer in headlights, and then we stop breathing. If you look at somebody that's stressed, they're not doing deep diaphragmatic breathing. They're breathing up in their chest. It's a shallow breath because the body is in that fight or flight. So one of the best things we can do is promote proper breath, because breathing not only gives our body oxygen, which helps our body get out of that fight or flight sympathetic overdriven state, it helps stimulate what's called our parasympathetic nerve system, which is the other part of the nerve system, which we call rest and digest. So there's basically two parts of the nerves. There's sympathetic, which is fight or flight, and there's parasympathetic, which is rest and digest. And one is not more important than the other. But for us to be healthy, they need to be in balance. But the problem is that 99% of people are driven in this fight or flight state 24/7. And why is that? Because they're chronically stressed. It's not like they saw a saber-toothed tiger, they're working long hours. They're on their social media all day long. They're looking at their phone 84 times a day. They're having a fight with their spouse or their boss. They're sitting in traffic. These are low-level chronic stresses that's basically affecting them. So stop, take a deep breath. One of my favorite breathing exercises is what I call the 3-6-5 power breath. And the best part about this is it's free. You can do it anywhere, anytime, so there's no excuses, and it takes less than 3 minutes. So when I say 3-6-5, this is what you're doing. You're breathing in through your nose for 3 seconds, so it's a count of 3. You're holding your breath for the count of 6, and you exhale out of your mouth for the count of 5. So this is a simple way to remember this. 3-6-5. 365 days a year. You need to do this every single morning as soon as you wake up. Minimum once a day, but if you want to be a rock star, you want to hit that bullseye, you can do it 3 times a day. And what you're going to do is you're going to make this a general practice. And like I said, it takes less than 3 minutes.
So stress is something that people really need to pay attention to, and becoming present in the moment will help, but it's something that the fastest way that I've found to deal with stress and bringing yourself from a very high state of anxiety into a low state on the positive side of each is usually 9 quick deep breaths. I also really love Wim Hof's breathing method, because Wim Hof, you can sit there and within 2 or 3 minutes you can bring yourself from, whether you're in a parasympathetic negative state or a sympathetic negative state, you can bring yourself into the positive state by doing the Wim Hof breathing method.
This is one of the things I tell all my patients. If you're eating the standard American diet, okay, it supplies about 20% of the nutrition you need on a daily basis. So I equate that to going to your car and randomly removing 80% of all the nuts and bolts and then trying to start it. What are the chances of something breaking down? Okay, so my point in this is, if you're eating a poor diet and you're experiencing these other stressors that are maybe not nutritional stressors, like a divorce, an illness in the family, a physical injury, or different types of trauma, and you're eating this poor diet, all these other stressors are increasing your nutritional requirements, but you're not getting them. Okay, that's a recipe for disaster. I mean, it's only a matter of time before something breaks down.
Perception becomes reality, in other words. So if we work with stress and begin to understand deeper what it is and how it's to our benefit, I think the shift happens when you have enough experience of seeing what's the worst could happen and you survive it or something approaching it. And time after time again, there's a point where you can look back. And maybe that comes with the age of being on the planet long enough. And some people get it younger, some people get it older, some people apparently never get it. That there's always somebody or something, some force looking out for your best interest. The question is, do you believe that? And until you do, you perceive the world working against you. And I'm guilty of that at any moment in time. That can happen. You fall back on old habits. But at a certain point you go, how many times have I been down roads similar to this and I've gotten through it? Why am I stressing out about this? And so I think all of the stressful episodes, however we perceive them, are for the purposes, for me, in my experience, to get me to the point where I begin to look and say, what's there to be concerned about? I've been through this or even worse. This is silly. This is absolutely silly. But of course, if we're not there yet, then we cascade down the worry, the inflammation, the fear, all of the things that lead us to disconnect from the still quiet whispers of spirit trying to direct us. And we get thrown off course. I remember I always enjoyed reading the books, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Douglas Adams, the big message, don't panic, right? Have your towel ready. And that was something that was so profound and also funny too, that, when you're in a panic mode, you are no longer connected, you're disconnected, you're in a state of automatic. And maybe that's appropriate if you're running from a bear that's about to eat you. But there are times where it requires the wisdom of another source, a deeper source, to guide you in a place where you might be trained for a lot of things, but not that one thing. So I realize there's philosophical discussions here in this that, it gets me deep when you ask me these questions. It's like, I blame you. No, I'm not a victim of this. I enjoy this kind of discussion. So please keep encouraging me.
Yeah. Is there any condition that isn't any negative condition in the body that isn't created or by stress, or at least influenced by stress, whether that is a toxic stress or a physical stress or, these imagined things? I think men of a certain age can face the stress from realizing they've come to the peak of their career. There isn't going to be any more. There's just so many areas, but presumably all illness, would you say, can be traced back to these kind of issues?
Oh yeah, certainly. I don't think that anything can be removed from that. As I said, I look at it ultimately, it's all positive, even though we can perceive as negative. But if you learn from it, how could it be negative? If your heart is ultimately open, if your consciousness shifts, if you become more compassionate, because you suddenly realize the things you might have judged people about, you've now gone through it, and it's like, wow, my heart is open, and now I have compassion for someone I used to think, how could that be? Why would they do that? So it changes your position on outlook on life, so that when you see somebody that would anger you, you're no longer anger. You're not feeling the same anger. You're now feeling a sense of compassion, perhaps even love, which is beneficial to you.
It's now indisputable that meditation is good for us. Neuroscience has confirmed it with study after study, clearly showing the beneficial effects on our brains that meditation has. Now, the very mention of the word meditation will undoubtedly conjure up a picture in your mind. But contemporary meditation may not be anything like you imagine.
I think meditation is one of the most important things that we can do. Meditation has changed my life. I know that the times I'm not meditating in my life, I'm more stressed. The times when I am meditating, I'm able to deal with my stress so much better. We have to understand that stress is always going to be there, whether we like it or not. The people who are going to be really healthy are the ones who are going to come up with the strategies to deal with that stress, and that's what meditation does. You don't need to be on some mountain in the Himalayas saying Om to be meditating. It's like I could sit there on a subway in New York City and just practice breathing, because to me, meditation is present time consciousness.
What I really, really love is meditation. Now, meditation takes practice, but meditation is one of the strongest ways to heal your body, to bring your positive energy vibration back, to calm stress, to get out of this world and get into this world. because this world out here is what's causing all the stress. There is no stress in your inner world.
Well, I'd give you that soundbite from Dr. Deepak Chopra. He's a brilliant guy, an MD, and he says every cell in your body is eavesdropping on your thoughts. And you can prove that biochemically. There's a whole field of psychoneuroimmunology in which they find the mind, this 3-pound organ, is generating neuropeptides. These are chemicals that flow from the brain based upon your thoughts, and there's about 400 that they have found, and they flow through the body, and every one of your cells has a receptor site for each one of those 400 substances from thought. And so you realize that human beings are built for brief periods of stress. Hans Selye, Dr. Selye, was one of the great researchers in the area of stress. What he did is he tied rats to a table, didn't hurt them, didn't pin them down, just took away their freedom and sacrificed them 24 hours later. And what he found is that they had the beginnings of ulcers, atrophy of the stomach, the gastric mucosa. They had the beginning of cancer and premature aging, atrophy of the thymus gland. They had the beginnings of heart disease, that elevated cholesterol. Basically, stress is non-generic. It's a generic thing. So I don't care whether your boss told you that you have an unrealistic deadline, or you can't make the car payment, or you're stuck on the railroad track, or there's a lion jumping out of the grass at you. It's all the same thing, and we're built to tolerate short periods of that, which is where you start coming in with simple techniques to help you modify stress.
I love meditation. Every single day, my meditation is giving thanks and giving appreciation and surrendering myself to the day. That is what I do every single morning. It's a short meditation. I know some people talk about, half hour, 2 hours. There are monks that meditate hours a day. I don't do that, but I never fail. I don't skip a day without meditating first thing in the morning, which is really, I think, a valuable thing for all of us to recognize that when we're getting started with our day, sure, it's nice to be organized and plan, but to understand that, we are part of a whole divine intelligence here. We're not here by accident. And to start your day recognizing by being thankful, being grateful, being appreciative for everything that we have got in our life, what we're going to get, and know where that came from, certainly not just from us alone, I think is a very healthy thing to do. And without meditation, then how else do you do it?
The Western religions have a lot of history, believe it or not, in that type of practice, in contemplative, meditative, prayerful states that might seem now Eastern because we've lost, I guess, context or even, memories of our own history. With the Judeo-Christian religions, I think in terms of a young man in Judaism and the bar mitzvah, it's the chanting of words. There's a prayerful meditative state when you really get in because the sounds are so powerful. Now we can look in forms of Christianity, we can talk about Gregorian chants as well. And so there's a lot of that lends itself to meditative states. So if you have an opposition to calling it meditation, fine, but the reality is there's a history in just about every major religion around the world of getting into quiet, contemplative, prayerful states through the use of mantras or the singing of songs or the embracing of the imagery of Christ or some spiritual leader that opens your heart to divinity, to divine love. So I look at this meditative practice or contemplative practice like a form of spiritual exercise.
And there's been thousands of studies and even more and more every single day where they're hooking people up to different types of brainwave devices, and they're seeing the differences between your brain going from gamma to delta to theta and all of the different levels and all of the benefits of meditation. Meditation is the only thing that's going to synchronize both hemispheres, and that's been proven with science. I hear that all the time because people think, oh, meditation, how do I meditate? I don't have time for meditation. But all you're doing with meditation is you're just disconnecting and decluttering your world that's causing all of the chaos and that's causing your anxiety and causing all the other things that are happening within your life. And it's just spending time with yourself. It's spending time in a peaceful state, which has been used for thousands and thousands of years, right? I mean, even, go meditate in the woods, go drink the water in the woods, get yourself out of the stressful environment and put yourself in a non-stressful environment. And you're right. I mean, there are a lot of people out there that are talking about different types of meditation, different ways to meditate. And it is kind of one of those metaphysical keywords, but comparing meditation 10 years ago to meditation now, I think people are at a breaking point with the amount of negative political news, the negativity on TV, being in negative circles, all of the complaining that people are doing. Sometimes it's good to just focus on yourself for a day and listen to what comes out of your mouth and start asking more questions or listening more than talking more. Because some people don't even realize that most of the day they just do nothing but complain, and they just talk negatively, or they create negative thought patterns within their body.
It can be stressful for a Westerner to try and quiet the mind. I mean, some people would rather run a marathon than quiet their mind, how hard it can be, because your mind can run off, because it's used to kind of being in charge, even though it was never designed to be in charge. It's supposed to be the one you control, and it takes control of you. So this practice, meditative, contemplative practice, is an exercise in stepping above and beyond even the mind, although people sometimes will look at it meditatively as a mental exercise. I tend to feel like that's selling ourselves short, because we have a spiritual side that goes much deeper than the mental side. And so utilizing, for instance, the sacred words, whatever they are for you, whether it be in Aramaic or Hebrew or Sanskrit, these are things that I've done and experienced as I grew up and learned that the vibration of words themselves are transformative. Terms of utilization for healing. Sound healing is now something you hear, healing with light. These are all frequencies. We've talked about frequencies in water, in homeopathy, and altering our own cells through sound, through belief, through contemplative prayer, repetition of sacred words. So this to me is a form of exercise that in the Western world we've done ourselves a disservice by dismissing, because we don't like that, maybe it came from a religion or a path that we didn't understand and we're afraid of. Look to your own religious history and find that it's embedded and embraced within that. Call it what you will, but practice it.
Hey there once again. We're on the last day. Unbelievable. If you're still watching this series, you've obviously really enjoyed it, and that makes us happy. I really hope that's the case. I also hope you've learned a lot from it. I say it again, we feel genuinely blessed to get the chance to touch thousands of lives as we continue this filmmaking journey. We're so grateful to each and every expert who gave their time and their knowledge totally free of charge, so that you can learn how to forge a totally new health journey for yourself. So let me encourage you one last time. Don't let the journey end here. When we make a series like this, there is so much information that's left on the cutting room floor. We can only cram in so much to the 10 hours or so that we broadcast live. And that 10 hours is taken from well over 45 hours of interviews that went into making Live Longer, Feel Better. So you can see every minute of those interviews and pick up dozens more health tips and lots more health advice by getting one of the packages that are available. We really, genuinely want to see people get well. So although this free screening ends tonight, as part of the Platinum package, as well as everything else you're getting, we're throwing in so many other recordings and interviews from the archives that you will have enough material there to keep you challenged and motivated and hopefully entertained for months ahead. So have a look below. Getting one of these packages, you will not regret, I promise you. And not only do you support your own health and that of your family, but you help Mike and I continue making films like this to challenge more and more people. And you'll be helping us run those precious schools in India as well. They're financed solely through the work of Live Longer and our partners. I think I've said it before, but we feed and educate almost 1,000 children every single day through that work. And that's something we are very, very proud of. So thank you once again. Enjoy the rest of the episode. Take care.
I think it really is going back to the idea of reminding people that we should all just have this awareness of what I'm talking about, being thankful, being grateful, and being appreciative, and understanding that anything that happens to you in your life is happening for very important reasons. Back to the idea of appreciation, which also goes back to the idea of never really ever getting too stressed out about anything, which is what I think is the greatest value of meditation, reminding us of the most important things that we need to never forget as we go through our day.
The data on meditation is overwhelming. 141 benefits to meditation, dozens of studies showing that it can lower anxiety, sleeplessness, depression. It can improve your immune system. Thankfulness. Get up every morning and have your list of prayers, reasons why I'm grateful. Humor, laughter. Norman Cousins called it internal jogging.
And this is not speculative, because neuroscience can now show us how mantras, how prayer, how meditation affects our brain and the rest of our bodies.
Yes, and the breathing of it. You know, in the Eastern world, they might talk about prana, right? But we can talk about life force and vital force, chi or spirit. Again, these are names for the same thing. And we must sometimes get over our own limitations or a construct and say, well, no, I can't do it because they call it that. Well, call it something else. I love the Shakespearean line, was it, a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. And I think that our Creator, God, whatever you call it, doesn't care so much for what we call it as much as we practice it, you know, and believe and live differently based on that. So if it opens your heart to that love, that divinity, that consciousness, one that serves others, that helps others, that uplifts you and uplifts others, then of course we see that it is benefiting us ourselves. Ultimately, I think spiritually, but clearly there is known benefit, scientifically validated benefit to contemplative, prayerful meditation, to slow the heart, to reduce the pressure, the blood pressure. We've talked about stress stimulating things to excess, to harm, to inflammation and damage, and that act of quieting and stilling the mind. There's another, I do a lot of discussions and lectures on neurological degradation, and I'll often point at heavy metals or deficiencies of minerals, selenium, silicon, but there are studies now showing that if you just still the mind for even 10, 15, 20 minutes a day, you can prevent things like Alzheimer's, dementia, etc., just by resting it and giving it a break. And through the use of the deep breathing exercises, the prayerful meditations or mantras that align with your belief system, you can overcome so much without any other intervention.
I love meditation when it's the right time for me. I mean, one of my favorite meditations is playing drums. That because I'm a drummer, right? So when I get in that space and I'm in that moment and in that zone in my house, and I live in the forest, there's almost nothing better in the world. Meditation is unique to the person. Some people really like to meditate after yoga class. I'm one of them. I take that in. The yogis say you meditate after the yoga class, so I like that. I'll do that 5-minute meditation. Then some people like to meditate in their little altar room and do that whole process as part of 10 minutes in their day, half hour in the day. Wonderful, if that's how you like to do it.
Well, what do we carry through attachment? What do we have in our past? Like when we mention a beautiful memory and we go back to that, we're uplifted, our heart is open, we become happier and more at ease. There are experiences that we may have had that we have memories for that are traumatic, that are tied to maybe what we perceive to be negative emotions. They're angering, or they bring up a sense of fear, and then you can feel the stress build in your body, the tightness occur. And so here are those times where I think about techniques to, if you talk about unloading an emotional backpack, or if you feel like it's Velcroed onto you, where you can go into those most beautiful of places and spaces in your memory from your experience and take those things with you and purposefully bring them with you, consciously bring them with you, not to fear them, but to embrace them and say, okay, we're now in our happy place with those things in tow. And now we have an ability to offload them in those most beautiful, peaceful places that will overwhelm those negative emotions that bring us down, that restrict us, because we're in a place of such awesome beauty that they cannot have the same impact in those places and spaces, whether they're in our mind or in the reality that we were there before. Now we have a positive ability. Some people will imagine maybe it was a peaceful, beautiful river or stream. They will take those substances or attachments or memories from that backpack and put them in the water so that they can be washed away. And these things have literal physical changes, emotional changes on you when you do that. And you think, this is silly. I'm just imagining this. But that imagination is one of the greatest gifts of our creation. And I think those are images in action in some cases, image imagination. We imagine it, but it becomes real. And you're unburdening yourself through these processes. And you think maybe initially, oh, it's just so silly. But if you do that, even maybe 3 weeks, 21 days, you will have transformed your life. You'll look back and you'll say, my gosh, I can't imagine how that ever had that impact on me. It doesn't have the same feeling. So that might be just a little technique that you can use to unburden yourself by taking it into that very special place and space where nothing can impact you negatively, and you take it with you and then you release it.
These days I seem to hear the term health hack quite a bit. Basically, it means a shortcut, a way to get to the benefits of something without investing huge amounts of time and effort. In the way, for example, that high-intensity interval training can give fitness benefits in a much shorter time than slogging away at the gym like we used to do. Or intermittent fasting, which seems to work tremendously well for some people trying to lose weight. Well, now we have a device that can bring about the benefits of meditation in a much shorter space of time. It's called BrainTap, and it's the brainchild of Dr. Patrick Porter.
You don't want to be mindless. You want to be mindful. You know, you want your full mind potential. So what we're going to do is we're going to activate your mind. That's why we call it BrainTap. We want to tap into your brain's potential for whatever you want. And when you learn these different strategies, which in the book, the book that I wrote about psycholinguistics, it talks about the techniques. There's a strategy to how we think. Not what we think, but how we think, even down to PTSD. When we did a study with Kansas State University and PTSD, the first thing we did was we got them listening to the grieving program and get them sleeping. Then we can deal with their PTSD. You need the tools first before you propose the solution. If somebody says, hey, you know, I can get you to Ireland and we're going to swim, you're probably not interested, you know. But if you say, hey, you know, I've got this plane, if we can get there in, 8 hours, you might be interested. You know what I mean? So there's quick ways to do things and slow ways to do things. We wanted the quick way and the one that gets the best results. So now we've been evolving BrainTap since the 80s, and we're in our 13th generation, and we'll just keep improving it when new technology comes out.
So let me see if I've got this right. BrainTap is an app. It's actually an app. So I can buy the app, I can get it on my phone or my computer, and it's audio, and I can use my own earbuds or whatever earphones. But the ideal thing is to have your own earphones plus headset, and then I get the light and the audio.
Right. You can get really good results with, it ups the game about 30% when you use the light, but we're still going to get 60 to 70% of the brain. Auditorily speaking, you get only so much information. To give you an idea, if you've ever been to a lecture and you couldn't hear the lecturer, but then you adjusted your view so you could see them, our primitive brain is set up so that we only hear what we see. If not, we'd be distracted all the time. So we have to keep the frontal lobe, the frontal cortex operating. We do that by light. So not only, there's a lot of benefits to light, but the biggest benefit to BrainTap, because we didn't know all this other stuff before, it's really a meditation process called the Jyoti meditation. When you look at a candle and it's flickering, we do that, and it was something that, of course, they've been doing in India or everywhere for thousands of years. That candle is flickering at 10 hertz frequency, alpha. So we're using frequency following response. So what we did is we could take LEDs and do it. Now, sound is real primitive too, right? We do drum circles and all those kind of things. So sound can do it as well. And what's nice is once you experience either or, you're gonna get a benefit. Most of our people out there in the world are doing just the app because it's easy. You can deploy it all over the world and people just download it and start listening.
BrainTap is something that changed my life. I met who's now a good friend of mine, Patrick Porter, through one of my good mutual friends, Bob Hoffman, one of the leaders in the chiropractic industry. And he showed me this little thing called BrainTap, which is a headset that you put on. And it was incredible because before I put the BrainTap on, I did what's called a heart rate variability test. Heart rate variability is a technology, a state-of-the-art technology that we use in my office in New York City. It's really been the gold standard for the last 50 years at helping us measure brain system health and nerve system health. So what the BrainTap is a headset that you wear, and in the ear set, there are lights that stimulate your acupuncture meridians. And then there's a visor that comes down that fires light into the brain to areas like your hypothalamus, your hippocampus, your prefrontal cortex. And basically those are fancy words for saying it rewires your brain. And there's all these different programs that you can run. So you can run programs for stress, you can run programs for weight loss, you can run programs for flying on planes, you can run programs for optimal health, you can run programs for basically every issue that there is. So I ran one for stress, which is something that I want to help my body always kind of salting that knot, help my body deal with stress better. So I did a 10-minute BrainTap. So I'm lying there on this zero gravity chair, and literally just being on that zero gravity chair, you feel incredible because your body is just in a really balanced homeostatic state. And then I put the headset on and it took me to another place. For people who are having trouble meditating, this is your answer. This is a way that can help your body get into that meditative, deep REM state. And then at the end of whether it's 20 minutes, 15 minutes, it's just incredible how your body feels. You feel like a new person. You literally feel like you're levitating. So I went back, I took my heart rate variability scores, and all across the board, 20% improvement from 10 minutes of brain tapping. Sign me up. So I got the technology in my office. I use it on most of my clients, and the people that use this, you know, it's a game changer. I live in New York City where people literally don't have 3 minutes to do anything, but people are giving 20 minutes of their time to lay down in a zero gravity chair with these earphones on because it's rewiring your brain.
So tell me what the app actually contains. I gather there's a very broad range of meditations, I suppose, which you lead people through or narrate people through. And are there specific meditations for specific problems or desires or whatever? Talk me through.
Yeah, we have 43 different specific results. That's why we call it performance mindfulness, which most people think of like sports or something. So we do have sports programs like football, basketball, golf, horse riding, even equestrian series. So these are ones that, and everyone's different, and we have over 800 of these sessions because the brain needs to do something different. If you do the same thing all the time, you don't get neuroplasticity. The brain literally it's kind of like wallpaper after a while. If you've ever been to an office where they played music in the background and after a few weeks of working there, you don't even know the music's playing. Because the brain's very good at saving energy. It doesn't have to process that. It says, oh, that music's safe. I don't have to worry about that. But if we can keep exposing it to new pieces of information, the brain's going, oh, what's that over there? What's that over there? So we're going to use some sound effects and things. So mostly we do things, most of the things we have are for problems like weight loss, stop smoking, stress reduction, phobias. Probably can't think of one that we don't have because we mostly work with our medical professionals. We have over 2,000 clinics around the world doing it. So they'll tell me, hey, Patrick, we need this or we need that. But then we have the other side of it, which is I just want to feel better. Like Better Life Me is a series we have that's, if you think of your life on the wheels of a spoke, and whether it's family or finance, or we have different sessions for those. We have one called Life Mastery that is all about getting out of your comfort zone and, you know, just expanding your life and your vision. We have one called Vibrant Health. We have some that are for, one's called Coping with Cancer. If you're working with your medical doctor, we have one called Say No to Cancer if you're doing it all natural. So we're not all things to all people, but there's different, we call bundles. So when they get the app, you can actually get online and just do the app and buy a bundle. And it's very affordable. You know, it's only like $10 a month. So they can do that, and there's no long-term contract. The nice thing with our app is that we only have 1% churn. When people use it, they keep using it. And our average user does it about 28 times a month. And we find that the biggest thing they use is insomnia. You know, how do they get rid of their sleeping problems?
So for me, I started using BrainTap on a regular basis, and it's really kind of helped me conquer my own claustrophobia issues. Many people know that my father passed away 2 years ago from cancer. My mom hasn't slept for a year and a half. It's really just sad when you lose someone that close to you, how it affects your family. And it was amazing how when I started using BrainTap, it helped me get my sleep back because obviously my mind was up racing a lot in the middle of the night thinking of my father. So I got a brain tap from my mom, and I didn't hear from my mom for 2 days, and then I get a phone call from her, and she's crying on the phone. And she said, Daryl, that was the most incredible gift you could have ever given me. She says, for the first time in a year and a half, I am sleeping through the night. I've been using the brain tap since you gave it to me 3 times a day, and it has changed my life. So this is what we're talking about. This is the power of technology like this. Something as simple as a 20-minute program that's and it's rewiring your brain. It's not like, okay, I feel good in the moment. This is rewiring your brain. This has helped me conquer my claustrophobia. This has helped my mom get back into sleep after a year and a half of not being able to sleep. This is a game changer. This is things that can either take you out as far as health goes, or can actually help you heal from the things that have actually affected us in so many different ways. So BrainTap is one of the things that I use every day. My wife uses it. We even use it on my 5-year-old son, Braden, because it helps children with learning, it helps children with focus. It's one of the most incredible technologies. I'm so grateful to my good friend now, Patrick Porter, for creating this technology and introducing it to me. And I'm telling you, we give this to all of our clients. We pre-test them, we post-test them. I have never, the thousands of tests I've done, I have never seen a score get worse.
We used to live in only nature. We didn't live in box homes and artificial light and all of that. So most civilizations were by water. Water has a resonant frequency of 10 hertz. So when we're by the waves or we're listening to those, our body reacts. The science is called frequency following response. So our body basically is always a biofeedback mechanism. When we walk near the ocean, we start to feel good. That's because our brain is creating acetylcholine. That's the feel good, like love neurochemical. So we start to, it's not just that the ocean is beautiful, it's actually doing something to us. And we're getting an ion bath and things like that. When we go to the mountaintop, we're getting 7.8 hertz frequency. That happens to be theta. So that's why when you think of gurus and yogis and they go meditate in the mountains, well, that's because they're closer to that spiritual kind of self. And they don't have to work so hard. The planet itself is a generator. They call it an isochronic tone generator. So it's generating these tones, or this frequency, if you will, like I don't know if anyone out there has ever been to a drum circle where you're sitting in a circle and it's chaos until 3 minutes. Everything synchronizes. They've even done this with metronomes. They put 5 metronomes on a table, and within 3 minutes, they'll all be synchronized. Our universe is synchronicity all the time. If we're out of sync, that's when we don't feel good. Part of what we're doing with BrainTap is we're taking experiences and we're teaching people how to think, not what to think. The biggest problem in our world right now is everybody wants to tell you what to think, but nobody's really trained us how to think. So BrainTap puts us into a unique state of mind. Most people want to meditate, in other words, but they don't want to take the long-term practice of meditating. So BrainTap does that for you. We say press play to change. That's all you need to do. Just press play. The brain follows it because your brain is used to everything in our universe is light, sound, and vibration. So we've included light, sound, and vibration in the BrainTap. The newest part is when people see it, they see the lights in the ears, they go, that's weird. What's that all about? Well, we're actually broadcasting 197 hertz frequency with light, using bone conduction to tell the brain and the bones to broadcast a frequency to turn off sympathetic overload. It's doing that without your awareness. It's just like sitting on a mountaintop and you're getting bathed in that frequency. The brain follows that. So we want to take what BrainTap does best is it's going to take you out of sympathetic overload or the survival brain and put you into the healing brain state. And even if it's for 10 minutes or 15 minutes or 20 minutes, the brain will then re-regulate. It creates neuroplasticity. And I could tell you a few stories about that, maybe if it's appropriate later, but the reality is that our brain is constantly changing. We used to think 20 years ago, we were born with this brain, and that's the brain we have. We can't change it. Now we know that the brain reorganizes based on information it's given. Even our gene change. We know that we can change 1,200 gene expressions just by using visualization techniques. So when you think about it, so what we've done is we took something that most people think is complex or hairy-fairy or, what we would call cosmic foo-foo, and we said, no, we're going to put some science around it. Because what happens when people are meditating that lived this kind of biohacking life before that was popular, they were calmer, they were more relaxed. In fact, there's studies now showing if you just even sit quietly for 15, 20 minutes a day, not even doing anything, just sit quietly, your brain will function 80% better. There's studies that show that if you take a nap in the afternoon, you'll get 80% of the energy you had in the morning for the rest of the day. So we said, how can we hack that? How can we use some kind of technologies?
I live in a world of many skeptical people. A lot of my friends are very wary of this natural health world that I've found myself in. They find it hard to believe some of the stuff that I'm telling them. And BrainTap sounds, you know, a bit like science fiction, or as one of my friends just goes, it's all woo-woo. But what we're talking about is something that's neurologically testable and changeable.
Yeah, I mean, you could be a skeptic of gravity. You could be standing on the roof of this building and say, gravity doesn't work, but jump off of that building and I'll prove to you that gravity works, okay? My point is that let your experience speak for it, all right? Don't knock something if you haven't tried it. And trust me, I'm the biggest skeptic. I was the biggest skeptic of chiropractic, all right? I'm not going to those quacks. Now I am one of them, right? My point is that when you do something and it works for you, then you can decide to make this a part of your lifestyle. But don't knock something that you haven't tried, because then you're really just knocking your health, because there's so many amazing things out there. There's so many tools, and there's gonna be so many people out there that wanna say things don't work, right? Because it's just contrary to what their belief system, because ultimately it comes down to our belief systems, our perceptions. So ultimately, you just got to try things for yourself and see if it works for you. And I can tell you that the research supports this. This is something that has been proven in the research that it neurologically changes your body, but I don't need research to tell me that I feel better. I don't need research to tell me that I sleep better. I don't need research to tell me that I don't have claustrophobia anymore. I don't need research to tell me that my mom, who couldn't sleep for 1.5 years because of the passing of my father, is sleeping through the night, right? That's all we need. It's about the results. That is the key thing.
Duke University here in the United States is one of our partners. So we work a lot with Duke. This year alone, we're in 2 classes at Duke. BrainTap is. We have a bundle in our app that's called Healthy Duke. So the students at Duke, when they're having stress or they talk to the student union, they're going to say, hey, have you downloaded the Healthy Duke app? Listen to this session. Because the kids at Duke, thank God, they don't have problems with drugs. But think about it. You're one of the smartest people you've ever met. You go to school and you find there's 6,000 others that are just as smart. So they're staying up late, caffeinating themselves, just working really hard and stressing themselves out. So why don't they just take a reboot? So Duke is one of our validators, but San Clarita University in Brazil, we just finished up a study with them, which we're going to be presenting in India, which I'll talk about in a moment. But the Francisco Cedral, Dr. Cedral, is part of our science team right now. And he's putting together all the studies. So we've done several studies. I'm fortunate to be part of Quantum University. I'm the Dean of Brain-Based Studies there. So if someone's doing a PhD in brain stuff, then in using the BrainTap, I work with them. So we have about 3 or 4 studies every year, from things from how to deal with mold in your home to working with depression and anxiety. What we did down there in Brazil, we did a study with telemarketers, because every university, people just don't line up to join these universities, right? They have a team of people that are calling. You know, if you said, hey, I'm interested in going to your college, somebody's going to call you back and try to enroll you, right? Or you're going to go to another college. These people, we find that salespeople are really high maintenance, right? I mean, think of a really good salesperson has a high threshold for pain, right? They get no's slammed in their face all day long, but they only are aware of yes. But after a while, that wears you down. So they had a big turnover, and they weren't sleeping well, and things weren't happening. So we did a whole sleep study with them. We found in 6 weeks that we had 100% of the kids in the study were sleeping marginally well, which when they did the tracking numbers, it was off the chart. They're like, what did that? We had the Wavi that I was talking about, the BrainCap. Their corporate headquarters called me and they said, what are you doing at BrainTap? And I said, what do you mean? They said, well, with Wavi, all the information goes into the cloud, and all these brain scans from around the world are all up there, and they're all correlated and things like that. Well, our doctors were getting 125%, up to 125% brain function in 30 days, where the others weren't. He said, what are you doing there? I said, well, we're teaching the brain again. We're training the brain the way it's designed to.
I love exercising. I love the outdoors. It's what we're made for. We're made to walk and run and play on the beach, to be outside enjoying the sights and sounds of trees, mountains, waves. I particularly enjoy cycling, canoeing and hiking. But if that sounds a bit too energetic, you can always walk around your block, go to the local park, walk by a river. It'll be good for you in so many ways.
Exercise is critical. I mean, I always say you can't exercise yourself out of a bad diet, but the foundation always needs to be exercise. If you want to improve your health, you start moving your body. If you want to improve your business, you start moving your body. If you want to improve your relationships, you start moving your body. And the reason why I say that is because motion is emotion. When you're stuck, you're stagnant, your body's stagnant emotionally. But when you start to get that body moving, what happens? You're stimulating your blood. You're getting everything flowing, and it just changes your life because your body just gets more of the energy that it needs. The blood is really the carrier of everything in your body. It delivers the nutrients to your cells. And it's been proven that exercise is not only going to improve the quality of your cells, and when you look at it, the quality of your health only boils down to the quality of your cells, but it improves the quality of our emotions. It improves brain function. They've actually proved this in research over and over again. So exercise is important, and you have to make it a practice to do this every single day. I'd rather have somebody exercise for 10 minutes a day and do it every single day than do 3 times a week at 1 hour, because it's that daily practice of moving the body. And again, you can do simple things like going out in nature and taking a walk. Doing a brisk walk is going to stimulate your hormones that help your body deal with stress, like your epinephrine, your adrenaline, your norepinephrine. It's going to help the body just feel better.
I speak for a hidden audience, an audience that doesn't have a voice, and that's the audience of people who've dealt with very serious injuries, of which I am one. And so I speak to people about, look, I can't do push-ups the way normal people can do push-ups because I have an injury that after 3 or 4 days of doing push-ups, it inflames up and I get a chondritis and my old injuries start to come back, and then I start getting pains in the neck, and I can't do that like normal people can. Some people have a knee injury, some people it's an elbow, some people it's a shoulder. And for those people, I say this, the most important exercise of all is walking. And if you do have a knee injury or an ankle injury, it's swimming. And so we go back to those basics. You don't actually, for longevity, you don't need to be in the gym. There's no research that shows that being in the gym is going to increase your longevity. But there is research that shows that if you're active, if you're farming, if you're moving around, if you're riding a bike, if you're swimming, if you're walking, you will live longer.
Exercise is a stress, but exercise is a dosable stress. So you can, if you're not walking much, you can start walking. If you're semi-athletic, you can kind of diversify what you're doing. You know, add a few things in here and there. If you had been athletic and you're carrying a little extra now, start moving. Start doing some of the things that you enjoyed doing before. There's a couple of things that happen here. One, you have all the physical benefits of that. Weight loss, your cholesterol lowers, triglycerides lower, your blood sugar lowers, your blood pressure lowers, just from exercising and everything. But you have, the immediate benefits of endorphin release, the serotonin, dopamine release from exercise, and the satisfaction of doing that. If you exercised a lot when you were young, and now you're not young anymore, and you start exercising, your body remembers when you were young again. And then your mind starts to remember when you're young again. And guess what? When you start thinking young again, you start acting young again. You start feeling young again. And so from that standpoint, there's an anti-aging aspect of exercise.
If someone was feeling depressed or anxious or stressed out at a given moment in time, and they just got up and walked for 10, 15 minutes outside, fresh air, whether it was sunny or not, and they came back, they would feel completely different. And there's a lot of other subtle things that happen before even too much anxiety overwhelm somebody. What about if somebody is just at work and they're feeling really tired and run down and they just don't feel that mental clarity? It's the same thing. If they were to just get up out of their chair. I mean, they talk about how sitting is worse than obesity in terms of the threats that it has on people's lives. Sitting too much. Just simply getting up and walking around and literally shaking it off, you're going to feel so much better within seconds if you just get moving. And the key is to remember not to get so hung up on what people hear about so much in the press about high intensity interval training and, you've got to do sprints and you have to, no pain, no gain. All of these things are ridiculous. Really, people just have to do things that are comfortable on a regular basis and physically move. And I like to encourage people at least 5-7 days a week. And whatever that is that enables you to do that, not when you're on vacation, but in a normal course of your week, is really, really helpful.
Well, one thing I will say about exercise, what saved my life years and years ago from my injuries, because I was injured young, 18 years old. So I had to find something, and I eventually stumbled into yoga. And yoga helped me so much. Now, I do want to differentiate. The kind of yogas we see today is almost like, I call it the yoga Olympics. It's so fast. You're going in there, you're doing this pose, you're doing this thing, you're doing this, and it's so quick. And we need to slow that down for healing. So we do a hatha healing yoga, which is a slow yoga. Maybe you do 10 poses. You hold a pose for 5 minutes. You go slow. It's not this race because you're trying to heal yourself, right? You're trying to open up the tissue, trying to get blood flow into the tissue, trying to breathe more. You're trying to breathe into your body more. And that's not going to happen when you're going 1,000,000 miles an hour.
When we talk about exercise and getting individuals up and moving around a little bit more, the importance of that has to do with the way you eliminate all of the chemicals and the toxins that are in your body. When we know that all these things come in that get congested and cause disease, well, we only have 5 ways to eliminate all of this congestion. You have defecation, you're going to go have your bowel movements. You have urination. You have sweating, diaphoresis, and then you have respiration. And men only have 4, women have 5. They have their menstrual cycles. So the importance of exercise has a lot to do with opening up 2 of your elimination routes, which are going to be respiration and sweating. If we don't sweat and we don't respirate heavily, then we're not able to eliminate those gases and all those toxins in an effective manner. But not only that, the bodies are made to move. We're made to exercise or to work our muscles, to strengthen our bones. And exercise has been shown to have many different benefits for the skin, for regeneration, for stress relief especially. I know for me, exercise is one of the best things with meditation to help me just relieve the stress, because during exercise you almost are forced to be in a mindful state, right? Because you're lifting weights, so your mind is usually only focusing on what you're doing. And when you're only focusing on what you're doing, whether you're cooking, which is another fantastic way to relieve stress and be mindful, holding the vegetables, cutting the vegetables, smelling the vegetables, tasting the vegetables or fruits, whatever you're cooking, that's actually a healing process that the body goes through, is the whole cooking process. So I really recommend, you don't need to do a lot of hardcore exercise, just go for a walk in nature. Get on a mini trampoline. You can just walk around your house. You can go up and down the stairs. Instead of taking the elevator at your office, walk the stairs every now and then. Just try to get a little bit more exercise in your daily routine, because that helps speed up your system. It speeds up your metabolism, and that helps you with all different types of healing and stress relief and everything that you want to accomplish.
My instructor, he is almost 75 years old. If I was to show you a picture of him, you would never believe he's older than 50. He doesn't dye his hair, brown hair, he has young skin, no wrinkles, and he does martial arts every day. He teaches at a medical school every day. He is very active. That's, if anything, he's very, very active in a way that he's not sitting very often, okay? And then he does exercise apart from that, okay? So that mobility, you know, in our society today, we have the, you know, this is the main movement people are doing all day long, you know? And it's terrible for them. They're not breathing well, they're not digesting well, they're not, you know, nothing's moving, circulating well in their systems, and none of that's being stimulated either. So exercise has, in my opinion, become more and more an essential component to our health today than ever before. People used to physically labor. They used to pick things up. They used to shovel things. They used to, you know, do a lot of split logs. They picked them up. They took them back in the house. They put them in the fireplace. You know. And
yeah, I still think there's a problem that people many people haven't got across. They hear the word exercise. I mean, we've talked a little about exercise there. I can imagine some people turning off and not actually hearing what you're saying, because, you know, even if you talk about movement, which you've also mentioned there, I mean, is there a way to get people to realize it's movement? You could be very overweight, but you can get out and go for a short walk and build it up. You can experience the benefits of walking in the park, taking your time, looking at the trees, walking by the beach. All those things I think are so important.
Absolutely. Just movement. You know, if you're going from sedentary, not moving, to just walking, just moving, that's a big step. Don't stop there, but that's a huge step, and that's the first step's the most important, because if you keep taking steps after that, you'll gain momentum. But it's that first step. That's the one you don't have any momentum. It's just sheer, I'm going to do this, you know, and that's the most important step, I would say. And it doesn't have to, you don't have to go get a gym membership tomorrow. You don't have to go, you know, join the martial arts class or join a dance class or that thing tomorrow. Just get walking. Just walk.
I love exercise. I think that sometimes, I mean, again, we're talking about stress, right? So you don't want to overdo it. Like a lot of people think that more is better. I look at exercise like I want to be able to wear my clothes the same way every time I put them on. I don't want any bulges or bumps, and I don't want them to be too big. I just want to stay where I'm at, you know, so I like to maintain. So stressing the body in any way, even by overexerting yourself, is still stress. And so I don't know if I even told you this, but recently I came out with a brand new project called Active. Yeah, and guess what it is? It's sonic caffeine for people that work out. It's all music. It's like having a personal trainer in a box. Actually, we have an app for it as well, but it's music that helps energize you. In the morning, like before I met you today, first thing in the morning, 7 o'clock, I was pumping that music into my room because it wakes me up and makes me feel good before I even have a chance to drink coffee. So I think that the answer to your question is I use frequencies both sides. I use ones that help you sleep, that help you relax, and ones that give you a kick in the pants when you need it, when you're in the gym or moving weight around. But because I care about our listeners, I would tell everyone, especially if you haven't worked out in a while, take it slow. I mean, just the fact that you're going in there and committing to something, take it slow, don't overdo it, because then you're going to also, you can still build cortisol even working out because you're stressed out.
It's so important to be out in nature. I live in New York City. It's a concrete jungle. I call it the most acidic capital of the world. And it's incredible because I look at my children. My son Braden's 5, my daughter Aaliyah's 2. And I remember when she was growing up, she was about 8 months, and we took her to the beach the first time. And she put her feet on the beach. She didn't know what to do. She was like, it was like almost like a shocker to her. And as a parent, it made me a little bit sad because we've kind of, not to our own doing, but we've denied our children this natural experience. So we take them into Central Park and they put their feet on grass. I'm telling you, they are different children. You know, grounding your body is critical. We have to be around nature because nature gives our body an expression of health. You know, when you put your feet on the ground, whether it's the grass or the ocean, which I think is the ultimate form of grounding, you're literally giving your body electrons. The electrons is what gives your body energy. It makes your body feel alive. You see, your body doesn't run on proteins, fats, or carbs. Your body's electric. It runs through its nerve system. And when you do that grounding, it awakens your nerve system. It makes your nerve system get that energy that you're not getting when you're walking on concrete, wearing shoes with rubber soles. So it's so important that we get back to nature. You feel more alive. You feel more connected to who you really are as an innate being. And I think you have to really make it a purpose, whether you're in the city or not, to make time to get out to nature, go for a walk, do a digital detox, which means you take your phone, you put it away, you put it in a bag, or you leave it at home, because when we detach from electronics and we get into nature, you just feel more connected with who you really are as a human being.
I think the exercise word frightens people,
Yeah.
particularly if they're maybe not in the best of health or a wee bit overweight, but it's not necessarily going to the gym or becoming
No.
a super athlete.
No, there are many things you can do that are fun. Gardening is fun. Walking, some of the simplest things, walking, dancing, biking, rowing, anything that involves movement. Housework requires some effort. You don't have to buy a stationary bike. You and I both know, Michael, most of those things have got about maybe 5 miles on them before they go up into a garage sale, and Bob realizes he just didn't like that. You've got to pick some activity that's fun. Martial arts. As I said, I'm 68, and I decided that martial arts, I tore inguinal hernia doing the splits. Actually, that calf muscle, tore a muscle there, and then in yoga, tore a muscle in the abdomen, and so I realized I need an age-appropriate exercise. And ballroom dancing, walking, swimming became my favorites. So pick something you like that you'll do on a regular basis, and you'd be surprised the changes that take place in your body. You sleep better. You detoxify. You're improving blood flow. Your brain works better.
For reducing stress, there is nothing better than getting outside. And again, don't get me wrong, again, with my exercise background, I saw thousands and thousands of people who benefited from going to a gym on a regular basis, indoors, air-controlled, on treadmills. They were certainly better off than those who didn't exercise at all. But in terms of stress reduction, for those people who don't feel that they're the real exercise type, don't worry about all the rules. And again, exercise for longevity, just to get it out there, is about 30 minutes, 5 days a week. All the science makes it very clear that if you move 30 minutes a day, 5 days to 7 days a week, you are doing a lot for yourself in terms of having a high quality of life all the years of your life. But if you're not really into any other form of exercise except getting outside, you're going to be a lot better off. For example, the Japanese knew this for forever. Forest bathing, they call it, by just literally going out into nature. And we need to also understand that we're all energy beings. So I think most people watching us get that. We get the energy from the people we're with and the environment we're around. Just going out into nature and feeling the air, especially in a forest, the signals we get from the trees and the leaves, that feeling is like nowhere else in the world. I know for myself personally, if I've gone out 45 minutes to 60 minutes in a park, just walking around with all of those trees, I feel completely different than the way I was before I did it. And I'm surrounded by computers and technology all the time. It literally is the best form of natural medicine. Go to a park. If you can go to a beach, if you're close to water, natural water source, what a great other thing to do in terms of air quality and all the negative ions that you'll be able to breathe in, and getting your feet on the ground. I'm sure you've had many experts talk about the value of grounding. There's something literally electrically positive about being in that kind of environment, especially with your feet on the ground. So again, 30, 40, 45 minutes of just walking on the beach or on the ground. If you can do that with bare feet, completely changes you on a chemical, hormonal level. So if people aren't sure about it, just try it once. One time, you'll notice the difference.
Ground yourself. Go to the grass, the woods, the dirt, take your shoes and socks off and ground yourself. Deep breathing. Because oftentimes we think of exercise, as you just said, right? Going to the gym and becoming an Arnold Schwarzenegger or running a half marathon, right? But it's as simple as grounding yourself and breathing. Go to a park, go to the woods, go by a riverbank, hug a tree, right? Go back to nature, breathe, and then see what your capacity is at this moment. Start off with walking, 30 minutes a day, 3-4 times a day, and see how that feels. And slowly you step it up. You don't have to run necessarily, but just walking 30 minutes a day, 3 to 4 times a day has been proven to increase health and decrease the incidence of illness. So the message I want to convey is to not complicate your life.
There's something I do almost every day that I'm convinced is particularly good for me. I find it's a great stress buster and mood enhancer. It's easy to do. I can do it in my office. I can do it while I'm watching television, listening to a podcast. When the weather's good, I can do it outside. Even scientists at NASA endorse its benefits. It's my mini trampoline. You can start gently, just simple bouncing. If you're overweight or if you've any balance issues, you can get a trampoline with support for your hands to keep you steady. As you become more used to it, you can even start a range of exercises, right up to high-intensity interval training.
You know, I live in New York City where it's a little bit harder because of just the environment. So we have a rebounder, which is a mini trampoline, and every morning that's my practice, no matter what. I make it 100% that I have to do this. I wake up, I take my rebounder out after I drink a green juice, and I'm literally bouncing up and down for 10 minutes. So it's the most incredible way to start your day because you're moving your body and then it elicits healthier habits. And the more healthy habits you can do, there's a knock-on effect. So it doesn't matter whatever choice you do. I had a client who texted me the other day and she stopped exercising because she thought the exercising she was doing was creating acidity, acid and inflammation in her body. And I said, no way. I said, exercise of any kind is going to help your body. It's about movement. There's so many things that we can do to help the body deal with the lactic acid or the acidity that happens after a workout. But the most important thing is that you get out there and you move your body. I mean, I've never heard of somebody that exercises and wants to go eat a Krispy Kreme donut. I mean, it's insane. Like when I exercise, I'm always on point. And the times when I'm not exercising are the times when I'm off point. So for me, exercise has to be the foundation of everything else that you do in your life. If you put that as the foundation of the pyramid, everything above that tends to be better choices. But if that exercise is removed out of the picture, then people tend to make more inflammatory, acidic choices. They tend to eat sugar more, they tend to sit more, they tend to do more of the things that we don't want them to do.
I'm a huge fan of the rebounder, the little mini trampoline. I just love it when I exercise in that. What is that doing to me, and is that something that you would recommend?
Trampolines are great. As I mentioned before, vibrational plate, these are all great. Most people who are suffering with illnesses need to understand that their bodies are becoming more sluggish. For whatever reason, lack of physical activity, and of course getting clogged up with too many toxins. A trampoline is fantastic because right away, someone is going to feel that stimulus of movement. It's going to stimulate your nervous system. It's going to stimulate your muscles to be moving and squeezing. And what is that squeezing going to do? It's going to be pumping your lymphatic system as well. Your lymphatic system won't move on its own. Just sitting around and laying in bed, your lymph system is completely inactive. The problem for most people are that their lifestyle of eating and drinking is so toxic that that lymph system gets very toxic as well. And this is making our blood and all our cells very toxic. So a trampoline is a great stimulus to generate movement in the body. For those people who enjoy it, I'm all for it. Vibrational plates, trampolines, you know what? Even if you're feeling sluggish, go try this if you don't have a trampoline. Just get up out of your chair and just jump around and shake loose the body, and literally bounding, they call it, where you're just bouncing up and down and just feeling that vibration of your feet hitting the ground sends a shock wave up through your body, and all of a sudden you will feel much more alert. But of course, in the long term, look at all the other lifestyle things you can do to clean up things.
Now, I mean, I told you I'm a huge fan of the rebounder, and until I came across this, I didn't even know what my lymph system was or how it operated, but I gathered the rebounding is particularly good for the lymph system. But I think it's something that's really important, particularly for older people. Older people maybe don't feel like going out and running like you do, because you enjoy running, but I think for balance as well, the rebounder is really good, particularly for older people. So just a wee bit more on that aspect of the rebounder.
Yeah, if I had to choose one exercise, if someone said there's only one exercise you can do and you have to do it for the rest of your life, it would hands down be the rebounder. There's research from NASA showing that the rebounder is 68% more effective than running at improving your cardiovascular function and also helping the body lose weight. Because you have to understand, when people are overweight, it's an acid problem. Toxins are fat soluble, and the body is holding onto those toxins to protect it. And that's what happens. So when you start to move that body up and down, what happens is you're stimulating what's called your lymphatic system. It's one of the most important systems of the body because it's the garbage collectors. The lymphatic system literally goes into our connective tissue, which is like the toxic magnet. It holds all of your toxins to protect it. But what the lymphatic system does, it goes into that system, it goes into those tissues, and it pulls those toxins out, just like a vacuum, and it wants to eliminate those toxins out of the body. And there's 4 basic ways that it does that. There's 4 elimination pathways. There's urination, there's defecation, there's perspiration, and there's respiration. So the thing that's beautiful about it is I do the rebounder, my wife does it, my son and daughter who are 2 and 5 do it. But if you're even getting older, if you are not able to go out and do a run, then it's a really easy way, cost-effective way, because they don't cost a lot of money. And the best part is that you can do this in the comfort of your own house. And what's great about it, as a chiropractor, it doesn't put stress on your spine. It doesn't put stress on your joints. Running, and I'm a runner, I love running, but it's highly impactful on your joints. But the thing that's great about the rebounder, which is that mini trampoline, is that it's this up and down motion. So it's actually very graceful for your body. It actually helps move the inflammation out of the joints. And whether you're young or you're older, it's a great, easy way to absolutely get the body moving, to get the inflammation out of the joints, out of the body, out of the blood. And it's a great detoxifier. And one of the things that I love about it is that I had a client who's in a wheelchair and they just couldn't really do any forms of exercise. So I put a rebounder at the base of her feet and literally had her feet just going up and down like that. So something as simple as that, even if you're confined to a wheelchair, is going to help your body because you're moving the body. We all know that we have the circulatory system, which is moved by the pumping mechanism of the heart, right? But your lymphatic system, which parallels your blood system, and you have 3 times more lymph than you do blood. So it parallels your blood system, but you don't have a heart to move your lymph system. So how does your lymph system move to detoxify your body? By movement. So when your body does that up and down motion, all right, the gravity of the movement causes the valves to close. So what happens is all this lymphatic congestion, all of these toxins, all these old damaged cells, debris, they kind of get shunted up, and then ultimately they get pushed out into the cardiovascular system. And this is why we have to hydrate, because the solution to pollution is dilution. We got to get the crap out of the body, and that's what that does. So as the lymph system starts to push it out, then we hydrate more to get it out of the body. And again, how does that happen? Urination, defecation, perspiration, and respiration. And respiration is critical in this because you got to breathe when you're on the rebounder. 70% of the toxic load in your body is removed by your breathing. Yet how many people are actually breathing to be alive? They're breathing to be alive, but they're not breathing to be alive. You know, there's a difference between the two. So when I'm on that rebounder, I'm practicing my 3-6-5 power breath. I'm breathing in for 3 seconds. I'm holding for 6. I'm exhaling for 5. And I'm doing 10 repetitions of that. So now my body's moving, I'm getting my lymphatic congestion going, and ultimately my breathing is getting it out of the body. So it's just the most powerful way you can start your day. No matter what's going on with your health, it's a really practical way to apply apply this in your daily, and the best part is you can do it for 10 minutes. Now, what I recommend everybody does is they start with a gentle bounce. And what I mean by gentle bounce is the balls of your feet stay on the rebounder, but the heels come off. All right, you're moving for the sake of moving your body. And what I mean by that is, you don't want to just go and start bouncing right away, because your body doesn't know the difference. Your body thinks you're in danger because you're moving your body from a tranquil, peaceful state to a rapid motion state. You don't want to go from one end of the spectrum to the other end of the spectrum. You want to ease into it so your body knows that it's not in danger. So you start with this nice, gentle, gradual bounce, and you do that for 10 minutes. All right, your body knows that it's okay, it's safe, it's going to start to detoxify, it's going to start to burn fat instead of sugar, because if you go heavy out of the gate, your body goes right into a sugar burning state, which is bad. We need to train our bodies to burn fat for fuel. Most people, because they're so stressed, are burning sugar as their primary source of fuel, and that's bad. When you burn sugar, it creates inflammation, and then what happens? You crave sugar, and it becomes a vicious cycle. So when you start that workout nice and gentle, your body moves into a fat burning state. Then after the 10 minutes, then I give you full permission, you start bouncing away, and I promise you, this will be the best exercise you've ever done in your life. You will sweat more on that rebounder than any other exercise you've done, and it's one of my favorite forms of way of working out.
You've probably heard people talk of the emotional backpack that we all carry, often full of unresolved issues, hurts and memories from the past that drag us down rather than build us up. Sometimes it can be a very heavy backpack indeed. Robert Scott Bell suggests we should still carry things in that backpack, but only positive thoughts and memories that uplift us.
Moving into a space that brings a calm or a peace over you. Now, this could be, just an awe-inspiring, beautiful scene. Whether it be physically a place that you have been in your lifetime. And maybe you can't get back there ever again. Maybe it was a once-in-a-lifetime journey that you made. But you'll always have that memory that is as real to you, perhaps more real to anybody else, because you were the one that experienced it. So if we take that concept of a walk in the forest or going to the beachside, and of course there are physically measurable things like the negative ions, the electrons that are present there, and we can even create them through science in a way. But the memory of the experience, and you can come back to that very deeply through contemplative, meditative, prayerful states, that you are brought to that experience is as real as if it is happening to you now again for the first time. So I don't limit our physicality is the only way that we can achieve and experience those places where the peace and the beauty and the awesomeness of creation overwhelm you. The very experience that you've had before, and you bring that back to your memory through these practices, can have the same impact, perhaps a lot less costly to you when you say, oh, I can't afford to do that again. Well, you don't have to. You can do it right now, right here, right where you are through these practices. So that's an exciting thing to know, that that is not only possible, but it's been proven with scientific validity that that practice can bring you to those places without even traveling physically out of your own home.
This might sound very priestly advice, but find a church. Find an organization, something that will help support you. Maybe not physically or financially or anything like that. Something where you have some emotional support. If some people are estranged from their families, we require that family unit in order for us to be healthy. That's essential for our well-being. If you don't have that, you need to find that someplace else. So find a group, find a church, find an organization that you can be involved in, and that you can have camaraderie, have brotherhood, sisterhood, that kind of thing. So you can come together and be with other people who will emotionally support you. That's another huge thing. Those are support mechanisms that we need just as people.
My background is exercise physiology, so I don't want anybody to think that I'm down on exercise. I personally love it. It is a great thing to do. But when you look at the people that live the longest on this earth, they have a sense of purpose. They feel socially connected. They're most of the time very active, working in and around their home, whether it's even in the soil, growing their own food, or being active in their house, working on something, not just retired and doing nothing. But this social connection and having a purpose in life. And of course, also, when you look at their eating habits, they don't exactly pig out. They have very small amounts of food, and they keep things very simple and relatively healthy most of the time. Those people tend to live the longest. These aren't people that are generally saying they've done marathons and triathlons and they've gone to the gym and lifting weights and all of this. It's really just about being active, feeling socially connected, and having a sense of purpose while they're alive. That's what's had these people live the longest life. And this is true for all those groups throughout the world, no matter where they came from.
Thinking of the psychological stress, the pressure that we put ourselves under, the kind of pressure that leads to people crashing. What's your perspective of that, and how can people identify it, prevent it, or work around it?
This morning at breakfast, one of my colleagues asked me that question because they're going through some struggles. And I thought about how I should answer that, because we're all so unique in how we handle stress, right? And we need stress to survive. We need stress to run from the lion and not being consumed. But the way I answered that question this morning, and I'll answer it now, is just to begin every day with a prayer. Right? When you wake up, just thank the Lord, thank your Creator that this is another day. I'm breathing, I'm going to get up because we're fortunate. And life is a blessing. We're alive by grace, and we can't not underestimate, when we wake up, what a gift it is. And begin your day that way. Do what your routine is, make some exercise, possibly, and then know that that day you're going to give it 110%. And there'll be ups and downs, and we're not perfect. There'll be days when, things don't go as well as we plan. But know at the end of the day that, hey, I did my best. And for me, seeing cancer patients every day, advanced cancer patients, most of which have been told there's nothing else that they could do, and they come with their children, they come with their spouse. Imagine, Michael, what one feels, what my staff feels, the doctors, the nurses. It's stressful. And so we have to just go internally and find that peace and know that if we did our best, the rest is up to God, right? And communicate with your spouse. It's so important to let go of this stress, and people have different ways of doing that. For some it's music, for some it's getting a punching bag and punching it, for some is art, right? So find that something that you have a passion for, that you love to do, that will bring you in a state of relaxation and a state where you can release that stress. And at that point, it's like you feel all that weight of your shoulders just leave you, and you're ready to do your best.